Welcome to your guide of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, Customer Service Standards for the YMCA. This online training tool has been designed to familiarize you with the AODA, outline your role and responsibilities under the Act, and offer guidance regarding how to provide outstanding customer service to people with disabilities at our YMCA. Together, we can ensure that our YMCA is open to all. At the end of this presentation, you will be required to complete an online quiz that was designed to test your assumptions about individuals with disabilities. The acronym AODA stands for the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. You may also hear this referred to as AODA. The Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act was passed in 2005 by the Ontario legislature. The purpose of this act is to make organizations in Ontario more accessible to people with disabilities. In order to achieve this goal, the government has developed, implemented, and will be enforcing new standards of accessibility up to and including 2025. The first requirement under this act is the Customer Service Standards, which were developed by the Ministry of Community and Social Services. These standards must be implemented by the YMCA and all other organizations by January 1st, 2012. The purpose of this law is to enhance the quality of service for people with disabilities. In compliance with the AODA, the YMCA has an accessibility and customer service policy. The YMCA recognizes the dignity and worth of every individual and seeks to create socially inclusive environments in which everyone, regardless of their background, experiences, or circumstances, is able to participate fully in. Building on a culture that embraces diversity and supports social inclusion, the YMCA is a shared experience for everyone to enjoy. To obtain a copy of our accessibility and customer service policy, please download it from our intranet or speak to your supervisor. To be compliant with the law, all employees and volunteers are required to receive information that will assist them in understanding that customers with disabilities may have different needs. This information will also help with defining the best way to help customers with disabilities access goods and services. After completing this session, you will be better able to assist people with disabilities and will be more effective in your role at the YMCA. As someone who works or volunteers for the YMCA, you have an important role to play as you are accountable for implementing this policy in your daily work. This policy will help you understand how to create an accessible environment that respects the rights of every individual at the YMCA. By participating in this training, you have already taken the first step in better understanding your responsibilities. We also ask that you actively support the implementation of these policies and accept feedback from members, participants, donors, contractors, or any other member of the general public. Once the feedback is received, forward it to the general manager for review and consideration. Your manager or supervisor also has an important role to play. They will arrange training for all staff and volunteers, providing support to any questions that you may have. They are also responsible for ensuring that people with disabilities have easy access to our sites and facilities. In addition, they are to ensure that the appropriate people are aware of and have access to the evacuation procedures for people with disabilities. Managers and supervisors will also ensure that notice of temporary disruption is provided when necessary. For example, they may post a sign to alert members when the elevator is out of order. Lastly, managers and supervisors will accept and report feedback the same way that you do. Now let's take a closer look at YMCA members and participants. How many people do you normally interact with in your YMCA role on a daily basis? Did you know that 1 in 7 people have a disability? Now let's say that you serve 40 people in a given day. That means you are likely to come in contact with 5 to 6 people with disabilities during your workday. As the population ages, this number will increase. The AODA has a definition of disability by which individuals are categorized based on physical disability, mental impairment, or developmental disability, a learning disability or cognitive dysfunction, mental disorder, or injury resulting in a disability for which benefits were claimed or recovered from the government. This list is used to identify people with disabilities for purposes of who is covered under the standard. However, to get a better understanding of your role, we need to look beyond the legal definition. Most people with a disability will tell you that they live normal, active lives and that the only time they feel disabled is when something gets in the way and prevents them from carrying out even the simplest of activities that many of us take for granted. Some things that often get in the way are referred to as barriers. However, many of these can be overcome. At the YMCA, it is our responsibility to ensure that barriers are removed so that all members and participants get the most from their YMCA experience. The biggest barriers for people with disabilities are often created by society. When you think about making our YMCA services accessible, it is important to be aware of both visible and non-visible barriers. A barrier is anything that keeps someone with a disability from fully participating in the social or economic life of our community. Some barriers could include architectural or physical barriers, information or communication barriers, technological barriers, organizational barriers, or attitudinal barriers. Architectural or physical barriers may result from the design of a building. For example, stairs, doorways, the width of hallways, and even the room layout may be a barrier for some individuals. Information and communication barriers can make it difficult for people to receive or convey information. Things like small print size, low color contrast between text and background, confusing design of print materials, and the use of language that is not clear or easy to understand can all create barriers. Technology, or lack of it, can prevent people from accessing information. Everyday tools like computers, telephones, and other aids can present barriers. Organizational barriers can occur through policies and procedures. These are practices or rules that restrict people with disabilities, for example, denying access to a person with a service animal. Attitude is the barrier that each individual is most responsible for, since it relates to the way people think or behave. Some people do not know how to communicate with those who have a visible or non-visible disability. They may also form ideas about them because of stereotypes or lack of understanding about the different types of disabilities. For example, they may believe that people with disabilities are helpless and can't do anything for themselves. Some people may feel that they could offend the individual with a disability by offering help. Some people may even ignore or avoid people with disabilities altogether. In some instances, people with disabilities rely on assistance to help them overcome certain barriers. Here are 3 common examples that you should be familiar with. The first one is a service animal. A service animal is any animal that accompanies an individual with a disability and performs specific tasks that are directly related to the handler's disability. It is usually apparent that the animal is being used for support. The next one is a support person. A support person is anyone who accompanies an individual with a disability and helps them with communication, mobility, personal care, medical needs, or with accessing the programs and services offered by the YMCA. Lastly, we have assistive devices. An assistive device is any device that helps a person with a disability do everyday tasks and activities. Assistive devices include digital audio players, hearing aids, teletypewriter machines, also known as TTY, for people who are unable to speak or hear by phone, mobility devices such as scooters, walkers, crutches, white canes, oxygen tanks, and so on, and speech-generating devices. Remember, the biggest barrier is attitude. When working with someone who may need assistance, be sure to focus on the person and not the disability. What does this mean? Well, here are some examples that you might see when someone focuses on the disability rather than the person. Asking the support person what the person with the disability needs, interrupting and completing the person's sentences, and moving someone's assistive device without permission are all examples of what not to do. Now, here are some examples that you might see when someone focuses on the person and demonstrates respect. Asking, "How may I help you?" to the person with the disability, waiting for someone to complete their sentence, and asking permission to assist are all examples of what you should do. Thank you for taking the time to find out more about the AODA and the YMCA's accessibility and customer service policy. Now let's recap some important points. The YMCA recognizes the dignity and worth of every individual and seeks to create socially inclusive environments in which everyone, regardless of their background, experiences, or circumstances, is able to participate fully in. You, along with your coworkers, have an important role to play in making our YMCAs more accessible. The biggest barriers for people with disabilities are created by society. Attitudinal barriers are the barriers that each individual is most responsible for, since it relates to the way people think or behave. Remember, it is important to always focus on the person and not the disability. We're almost done. Now, let's test some of your assumptions about people with disabilities. In order to complete this training module, please follow the link below to access our online quiz.